أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and welcome to Youth Forum. Today's topic is going to be about culture and Islam, but yesterday did mark the 37th anniversary of the Islamic revolution led by Imam Khomeini, so we are going to discuss about that as well. I'm joined with two of my usual guests, Syed Jafar and Syed Zayran.
Assalamu alaikum.
So before we begin, Syed Jafar is going to do the tilawat of Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بطغواها إذ أنبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها صدق الله العلي العظيم.
MashaAllah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. So yeah, sticking to the topic of the Islamic Revolution, the 37th anniversary was yesterday. So Brother Zayram, can you just enlighten us just a tiny bit about the impact that it had, especially on the youth as well?
We have to look at revolutions in a very analytical way. And if you analyze revolutions, me and Jafar were in a program the other day where a brother was giving a presentation about the youth. And the youth are always, put under control in the West. And it's because the youth are the ones that lead the revolution. When Rasulullah came into the world and he was trying to bring upon this world the religion of Islam, he didn't try to change the ways the elders think because he knew that they were rebuttal against him. This doesn't mean he gave up on them. He didn't give up on them, but he focused more on the youth because youth tend to be more naive, which in a good sense, because they'll start looking at things with open-mindedness, with more, consideration in what people say. And if they're not thinking about family, and they're not tied down by family, friends, what society thinks. If they think this person's right, or if they like this person, how they think, if they think this ideology is correct, they will go for it and they will fight for it until the end, until they get to a point where they realize there's another ideology. That's why you always see society, especially on social media, because it's dominated by the youth. On Twitter, social media, Instagram, I'm pretty sure if any youth are watching this now, you all have those social media accounts. You'll see that they always change their minds when they have new information, whilst elders tend to just stick with one. So the revolution now has given, motivation that even in the 1970s and the 1980s, when the revolution was, successful and it changed the whole world, Imam Khomeini changed the whole world. We have belief now that we can still change the world, and it's happening right now. Egypt, Iraq, Syria, even though there might be wars after wars due to, whatever country you believe is responsible, but the youth are there that are still continuing to make a change, and even now can make a change.
Yeah, of course, talking about, as he's talking about like Imam Khomeini and the revolution as well. So can we use this excuse almost and use these figures as role models for the youth as well, for the current generation? Because not many people know about Imam Khomeini nowadays, maybe because before.
To be honest, us youth, we need like a role model to look forward, like look up to. Because if we don't, then we just sat here doing nothing. It's like we have no aim, we have no goal. If we have a role model like Imam Khomeini, then of course we're gonna follow his footsteps. And like Zagim said, we are energetic, we can make a change. So I think we do need a role model, whether it be Ahlul Bayt or whether it be Imam Khomeini, but of course it has to be on the right path.
I mean, I think one of the main issues nowadays is they look at role models like Imam Ali and the Ahlul Bayt as a whole, and they almost like move away from it because they can't be almost like there's almost like a doubt that I haven't seen Imam Ali, I haven't seen the Ahlul Bayt, and I've just heard stories.
Okay.
But for example, Imam Khomeini, they can see like video clips of like what he actually done, and like how he changed the nation and to become so.
Yeah, the contemporary figures like Imam Khomeini. The difficult thing, what people make excuses with the youth now is that Imam Ali is infallible, Ahlul Bayt are infallible. We can't be infallible, we're fallible people, we make mistakes, we're human beings. But we have to realize that the Imams came in human form to show that we can reach a certain level where we are close to the Imam, where their level of understanding, their purity, we can't reach that. It's impossible. But like people say, there's an English saying, why did people tell me the sky's the limit when there's footsteps on the moon? And it's the same thing here. Imam Khomeini was that figure. Now we have figures like Ayatollah Sistani, Ayatollah Khamenei, or even figures that might not be known in your community. You can use them as role models because they follow the Ahlul Bayt. Imam Khomeini especially, just like you said, video clips. We can't see Imam Mahdi, we can't see Imam Ali and Allah. Even if you want to look at human beings who are very, very high in the eyes of Allah, like Hazrat Salman Farsi, Hazrat Maysam Tammar, Maliki Ashdar, and the companions of Imam Hussein. Well, you don't have to look far. You just go on YouTube and write Imam Khomeini or any of the figures that were, influential in the Islamic revolution. So it's a very good point that you put upon here, that they are contemporary figures to help us connect to Imam Mahdi and the Ahlul Bayt.
Ultimately Imam Mahdi.
Yeah, moving away from the topic of the revolution as well, and I think one of the biggest role models you can say that in the families, you can say like the parents, the father and the mother. So how big of an impact do parents have to youth, Brother Jafar?
The biggest impact on it, they raise you, you live with them pretty much every hour of every minute, and so like basically if your parents, inshallah, they bring you up in a good household and in the dhikr of Ahlul Bayt alayhum salam, and they guide you to people like Imam Khomeini or Imam Ali alayhi salam, and of course you're going to turn out well. But if the household, like I know some people who are Shia, who are Sayyids, regardless whatever, Sayyid non-Sayyid, but they're in a household who the parents don't really care about the kids, and thus the kids come out not as good, which isn't really an excuse for us, because us, we can go and read more about it. We don't need our parents to force us to read it, but it does have an impact.
So do you think it's one of the biggest impacts, Brother Zayhaman, how like a youth, how children grow up and how they become and what they do in their life? Do you think the parents have the most impact?
I think there's a saying, I remember that's coming in my head right now. It says that whatever good is in me started with you. This was someone speaking to their father, and it stuck to me because it's true. Like whatever you're doing now, we're poets and you do Quran and you do media and stuff, it's all because either your father or my father or our parents told us to do it, or we saw them doing it. You see your father, he's doing work in the Islamic world, my father doing work, your father, etc. Whatever work they do inspired us to do work, inspired us to do the show. And in many ways than others, parents are the biggest influence because Allah Himself says that when we become parents, Allah will test us on the Day of Judgment and ask us questions about how we treated our children, what we taught them. And there's a huge emphasis on children and how to teach them. But just like you were saying that you have good people, but when they become parents, their children do become good people. And that's because maybe they failed as parents but not failed as mu'mineen. But everything comes as a whole. I know Yazid Antullahi alayhi, the one who killed Imam Hussein, his son was actually one of the greatest companions of Imam Zain al-Abidin, Muawiyah ibn Yazid, not the second Khalifa Muawiyah. No, not the second Khalifa. One of the Khalifas, Muawiyah. Sorry, I got confused there. But the one who is the son of Yazid, Muawiyah ibn Yazid, he was one of the greatest companions of Imam Zain al-Abidin, because Yazid was such a bad person that he came to realization that why is my father such a bad person and who is he oppressing? And when he realized who they were oppressing, he fell in love with Imam Zain al-Abidin. But he still respected his father. Like Musa, when he went to Fir'aun, Allah said to Musa, do not speak loudly in the household of Fir'aun, la'natullahi alayh, because he raised you. So there's still respect, and there's that connection.
So exactly.
So even if your parents are, maybe they're not the best of people, or they're not the most Islamic people, you still have to respect them, but you have to find your own way to Islam as well.
Yeah, of course.
And not only base your beliefs on the parents.
Like, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but eventually on the Day of Judgment, we will be asked, how did you know that this religion, Islam, is right? How do you know Shi'ism is right? So you need to be responsible for you are following the path of Ahlul Bayt. How do you know this is right? You're going to be asked that. So if you don't know anything about it, you're just blindly following it. You need to read, you need to ask your parents, ask whoever's in the mosque, and then figure out, maybe is this, eventually you're going to come to that answer that it is right. But you need to follow the process, and then...
I was just going to add a point, to Jafar. He said a really good point. I don't know if you clarified it, but I think you were trying to say, like, even if you're a good person, but if we're following because of our parents, on the Day of Judgment, we're not no different from the kuffar, the unbelievers, or any of the non-Muslims, because they were doing the same thing. If I said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we say, I should go heaven, your father gave that example of the plate. What's on your plate, and what you're going to show to Allah that why should I go heaven? If you say I prayed 5 times a day, well then Christians go churches and pray every Sunday, and they're following their own obligatory acts. So we're no different from them. So we have to find our own way.
You need to come with a reason why Islam and Shi'ism is right.
Just a reminder that there is a number on the screen, and if you'd like to contribute to the program, you can call in, and if you have any questions, we'll try our best. The guests will try their best as well to answer it. And Brother Jafar, just moving aside from the impact of parents on the youth, what do you think the impact of culture is on parents? For example, because nowadays the culture in this country specifically is very neutral, but our parents may not have that neutral culture. They might have like the culture from their background, for example. So what impact does that have on the...
I think Zagan made a very good point at the start. He said that we are more capable, we're more open-minded into accepting new ideas, rather than the older generation who is not as open-minded, and they kind of, rebut these kind of ideas, new ideas. So if a cultural thing, an act is happening in the older generation, and they keep this going on for a long time, and we come to a conclusion, the youth come to a conclusion that this isn't, benefiting the image of Islam, then there is going to be a clash between the older and the younger generation, which, will cause a lot of trouble. So I think culture can affect Islam's image in many ways, good or bad, depending on what you're doing. But to be honest, I mean, Uzaygan, what do you think? What about culture?
Culture is something, it's a difficult topic, especially in our age. We can't speak, but speaking from the youth's perspective, that culture is something we should embrace at the same time. And if it clashes with Islam, then you have to start rethinking, because let's say if you think about Islam and you forget all culture, how are you going to practice it? Because if you say, oh, let's wear the hijab, whatever hijab you wear, it's going to be pinned to a culture. Because Islam came into in an Arabic country, in an Arab state, which is contemporary Iraq, joining of Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Syria, all them together. It was big countries back then. Then it'll be that kind of culture, but we should embrace at the same time. There's different poetic forms in Urdu, English, Farsi, Arabic. All those are beautiful forms, different cultures integrating. And the difficulty of parents coming is that if your parents are not integrating, then you need to do their job for them. And because the current state now, all democracy is saying Islam is a bad religion and everything, you're giving it a bad name. Sometimes culture does that, what you were trying to say.
Yeah, it does give a bad, like some things, I don't want to mention what they are, but some things do give a bad name to Islam. And I think, to be honest, we wouldn't, like the thing that I'm talking about, I think you know what I'm talking about, but that only happens once a year. If we talk about the things like ghiba, for example, which kind of is a cultural thing. Like I know in the Arab community there's a lot of ghibah and like, you know, gossiping and all that inside the mosques. You know, when we go, for example, to you know, a community center or whatever, or mosque, there's a lot of ghibah. So I think that happens on an hourly, daily, minute, every single minute we're doing ghibah. So I think we need to tackle that kind of cultural, you know.
So do you think that culture has like a big impact on your interpretation of Islam, for example? Because a lot of people from different cultures have a different interpretation of Islam.
It does. For example, like there's millions of examples you could give. There's millions of, I don't know how many people are watching now, but millions of people around the world who are, billions who are Muslims, millions who are Shias, and they've been channeled in a way towards Islam. Everyone's going to the same direction, hopefully, but in different ways, which is a beautiful thing at the same time. But sometimes it could be a bad thing, and we have to go back to the letters of Ayatollah Khamenei and Ayatollah Sistani, who specifically say, which goes back to the point, that you have to go direct to your sources. You need to prove why you're doing this. Now I can say, why am I doing, you know, in the Shia sect, we do, you know, Latam, Matam, Noha, whatever you call it. And there's different styles of it. But each one has, you know, greater thawab, the more sincere you are. But if you're committing an act that's making you bad or anything, or you're committing an act just because of society, you know, there's a lot of things we do because of society, and there's a lot of things we should do, but we don't do because of society. We're like, oh, you know what society might think, what the elders will think. But if you think it's the right thing, then do it, because there's always going to be the elders who always gossip will always gossip. Even if you, let's take the example of, you know, integrating with some friends. You know, if you have non-Muslim friends, there are some who will appreciate that, embrace that, saying, oh mashallah, he's, you know, having non-Muslim friends, he's spreading Islam and he's committing in a good way. But there are some who are just like, you know, oh, astaghfirullah, he should keep to our own. But how are you ever going to spread Islam to keeping to your own?
Well, just you've got bring it back on, like specifically on the topic. I remember a quote, don't quote me on this, but from Imam Ali, he said something on along the line of, don't try to force your sort of belief and your sort of culture onto your children because they are from a different era. So do you think our elders sort of have a responsibility of being more open-minded? Because I think nowadays that most of the people from the previous generation just want their children to be exactly like how they were when they were children.
To some extent, yeah, because I mean, if the parents, like some parents would say, okay, you know, flan, you know, whatever the son's called or daughter's called, okay, you can do whatever you want, you go find your own religion, and I'll just be here if you have any questions. This kid's not gonna be bothered, you know.
Yeah, he's not gonna find any religion.
Yeah, he's just gonna, you know, or she is just gonna like forget about religion. They'll probably say that there's no God, okay, there's no proof, and maybe the parents can't even back up their own religion because they haven't even proved it to themselves. So I think there has to be that kind of, what's it called?
Schema. It's like a base. What you have to do is learn the good things from your culture and use that as a base.
So do you think they have a responsibility to sort of guide them towards the right path, but then maybe the youth have a responsibility themselves to find the right path themselves? Because nowadays what we see is that parents, I'm not saying, you know, some parents, they don't really embrace Islam as much, or maybe they do embrace Islam as much, but they don't teach their children. And what happens then is that they go really far away from Islam, and then what happens, their children do the same, and then it carries on like that, and then there's going to be a specific generation where they don't know anything about Islam.
We don't have to be conformists. Islam teaches you to be the shepherd, not the sheep. It teaches you to be a leader. That's why Imam Khomeini was so successful, going back to, you know, the first topic, and why many of our Imams they were single human beings. Rasulullah was fighting even worse than now in Jahiliyyah, the time of Jahiliyyah, the time of ignorance. Now it's not even known as the time of ignorance. So why we were so successful is because Islam teaches us to become leaders in what we do. So, you know, as a parent, you have to be the leader. If you're a king, you can't leave your kingdom to die, or you can't leave your kingdom to sway. Otherwise, the kingdom will crumble. So you have to keep your household, in another sense, is your kingdom. You have to look after your children, make them leaders so that they can lead. And it goes back to that advice that Rasulullah gives, from 0 to 7, treat them as kings, give them anything, make sure their love is appreciated. 7 till 14, you have to treat them like slaves, not in the sense that you oppress them, but you suppress them, meaning you contain them, guide them, teach them, and make sure they're doing the hard work as well.
So do you think that teaches them to be more sort of respectful towards the elders? If, from 7 till 14, if they serve the elders, it almost teaches them to, when they grow older, past that age, that to serve Allah and to serve like Islam the
Yeah.
same way.
Precisely.
Yeah, to the same way they serve their elders.
Even scientifically, like the age from 7 to 14, that's like adolescence. And if you leave the kid to go out, mixed school and all that kind of thing, loads of stuff's gonna happen.
Biggest development,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
So every 7 years is when the human, I think the face change. I can't remember where I read that, but like the face changes and chemicals in the body, get
all
secreted,
reset,
hormones.
yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I think every parent has a responsibility, but as well every child has a responsibility as well too. So I think that there needs to be like a balance between the parents and the children.
Mhm.
Everything just goes back to the sources. You need to look at the sources of the Quran, saying how you're going to implement them. We are from three different cultures, Iraqi, Indian, Pakistani. But how we are so good friends, or good mu'mineen, or we're connecting in such a way is because we have the same purpose, to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we're trying our best. We're not infallibles, but we're all trying our best to look at the sources and follow the same path. And our paths cross because we have the same religion, we're following the same. And culturally, because our cultures have followed the same base, we actually realize, there's a lot of things in the Iraqi culture or the Indian culture that's very similar to my culture. And that's maybe because we were brought up in the same country, but as well, they have the same schemas. Like marriages, you call it different words or you do it in a different way, but at the end of the day, you're doing the same thing. You're doing the nikah. Or, let's say somebody's born or somebody has passed away, a funeral or a birth. The way you celebrate it is called different things, maybe done in a different way, but it comes back to the same principles.
So what do you think the solution for this is? Do you think that both the parents and the children have the responsibility, or do you think it leans more towards the parents or maybe the youth, Brother Ja'far?
It's a hard question to answer.
Is that a question in it?
Yeah. I think, like we said before, the parents do have a big responsibility. So I don't know if I'm right, but from when the kid was born till around, we said 14, that kind of age, the parent is fully responsible. And after that, the parents is still responsible, but the kid has to develop and has to find his own ways and reasons.
So do you think that the age that you said till 14, they should
It's not a specific age, but
around that age, around the development age.
Yeah.
Do you think the parents should almost teach them Islam and teach them the basics of Islam, and then after 14 almost just guide them to the right path, and then
because the parents don't know everything.
Yeah.
Like some parents maybe don't know anything, so they're trying to struggle to bring up the child. So of course the child needs to go and read and that kind of thing. So yeah.
We can't say we have to be submissive because we have free will. If we could become submissive, then psychologically that means you're going to do what your parents did. But we know, looking at studies, especially we study psychology, it's never 100% genetically, environmentally, in any substantial way. So it comes through a balance, but the parents always need to guide them. 0 to 14 is probably the biggest development age, so you have to invest the most in there. That's why in the UK, until you're 16 or 18, your parents are responsible for you, because even the West recognize this through their studies. But what you have to understand is that anywhere in the world, parents are always going to look after their children, because they're always going to be older and they're always going to be more experienced. They're always going to be wiser. Allah, I think Imam Ali, he put it beautifully. He goes, he's trying to, in Islam says, look at the things in a good way. Look at the glass half full, not half empty. So he said, respect people the same age, because you do not know of your sins, but you know of your sins, but not of their sins. Respect the elders because they have done more good deeds, and the elders should respect the youth because they have less time to do sin. So it goes both ways. You should learn from the experience of the elders, and you should learn from the free-mindedness of the youth. And they both, if you master both of them, you go to a very high stage. Like going back to the figures, Imam Khomeini, everyone. And in Islam, how we define youth is being open-minded. So you see the Battle of Karbala. There were 60-year-old men and 50-year-old men fighting. Imagine now that's like the age where you retire from a job, like being a teacher. You're kind of capable of doing that. But Islam says you're a youth if you're open-minded. And they were open-minded all the time.
They accepted Islam. Yeah.
So what about people, the children specifically? What if they are orphans, for example? What message can you give them to bring them towards Islam? Or if their parents aren't really that into Islam. For example, a lot of reverts, they find themselves into Islam. So what do you think their secret is almost? What do you think, what passion, what lights up their hearts?
The father of the orphans. Imam Ali is the father of orphans, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, to the greatest man ever. Imam Ali after Rasulullah. And Allah himself says that if you don't have any parents, come to me. That's, you know, sometimes they might, you know, it's a bad thing, it's a tragedy. But tragedy is always a good thing at the end of the day as well. Because you've lost a parent, then you can say to Allah, Allah, I've lost a parent, be my parent. Be there for me. Rasulullah had no parents. We always keep forgetting this. Our Prophet had no parents. His father passed away and his mother passed away by the time he was 3-4 years old. Abdul Muttalib looked after him, his grandfather, and then Abu Talib, the father of Imam Ali, his uncle. So there's examples. And if you're going to say about reverts and orphans, us as a community, we actually have a responsibility. You know, I can't remember the word, what's it? You know, wajib upon everyone until one person does it.
Wajib kifaya.
Wajib kifaya, I think. But it's the wajib, the compulsory act that if you don't do it, I mean, when it becomes compulsory, everyone has to do it until it's done. One person has to do it. So when there's an orphan, you have to look after him. If there's a revert, you have to embrace them, invite them, and that's how you do it.
Thank you, Brother Zekham. So after the program, we will discuss more about this topic and have a general discussion in which you can also participate. And Brother Zekham is also going to do some poems as well. And you can also contribute your poetry as well. So inshallah, we'll see you after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.